Hello, Steve White, Steve Arts 89, Madman Mars. Now, Madman Mars is oddly one of my favourite horror movies. Now, it was written and directed by Joe Giannone and produced by producer Gary Sales. Now, they had never done a movie before, and after some of the recent slashers, they thought they could make a slasher, so they made a slasher. They made it in '81, and it didn't get a distribution until '82, and didn't get a premiere until I think January '83, and then in New York, and then in Los Angeles a month later. It was a drive-in sleeper. It made $1.3 million, and it's had 3 DVD releases. It's got a cult status, and it's kind of an odd little horror classic. Now, it's starring Galen Ross and Paul Efflers, who are people I've never heard of before, and I've never seen any other films. Um, they did a basic audition. I'm not quite sure why I love this film. Now, I saw it when I was a kid. I know I saw it. I don't know if I saw it at a friend's place or if I saw it on TV, but it has this really campy little theme song which seemed like a computer game to me, like an 80s computer game. And I know a friend of mine had an old computer game that was like a spooky sort of game, and it reminded me of that. And I know I connected those together as a kid, and I just had this memory of this creepy little game and this creepy little theme song for this horror movie about this guy who ran around killing people with an axe, and it just stuck with me a lot as a kid. And I remember finding it on video years later when I was an adult, when I was studying cinema, and I was just going to like Blockbuster and Movie Land. It was awesome. If you got more than 10 weeklies, it was like $1 each. So I'd get like 14, and I have like a movie every night, 2 movies every night. I have like a double feature every night. I was studying film, and I was obsessed with film at the time. And a lot of them would be horror movies. And I went through all the old ones I could find from the '80s that I'd never seen, because my video store in my hometown didn't have much. Um, so when I moved to the city, to Melbourne, I basically was just going around all the video stores and finding all the old films I'd heard of and never seen. So I didn't get to go to the movies a lot when I was a kid because we didn't have a cinema in my hometown. Um, so I saw it, and I'm like, oh my god, this is that movie I saw when I was a kid. Um, and I really enjoyed it. Now, the video copy wasn't great. It was old and faded, and I think that was something that happened with a lot of videos. They were struck from older prints that had been through the drive-ins and the movie houses, and they really are kind of faded and blue. And this is bad for most films because it just it looks bad. But with horror films, I think it really helped. I think it actually helped a lot with the atmosphere and the mood and the tone of a lot of the films. It made them sort of stark and cold, and some of them were shot like that and were coloured that way anyway, but the ones that weren't, they had that look. And unfortunately, a lot of movies now have been restored for DVD or Blu-ray or whatever, and it hasn't really helped, because yes, they all look nice and fresh and bright and the colours are all, but then that just takes away from the tone and the feel of the film that it had when it was either in the cinema or on video. And this is one of those films where all of a sudden um, it's just all bright and perky and pretty, and it kind of hurts a little bit. So it was originally released from Anchor Bay, and they did a full screen widescreen, so you had the black lines on the top and the bottom. And then someone, so it was from Anchor Bay, and the two independent companies, one released it on video, DVD, sorry, with an anamorphic widescreen version, which apparently was restored or taken from film elements that didn't have the blue hue, so it lost something. And the Blu-ray, I haven't heard anything about the Blu-ray. I haven't bought it. I saw it and I should have bought it, but I had a copy from YouTube, which is widescreen, anamorphic widescreen, but it doesn't. I did sort of remember because there's still some blue in the nighttime shoots and that, but there are parts of it that look so nice and bright and warm, and it feels different. So I'm guessing that's the same version that they have put onto widescreen, and that's the one that was on YouTube. But I've yet to investigate that, so I'll have to work that out. And I might have to just restore a few films myself that are too bright. And like Halloween 4, I've got a copy of that where they took off all the blue tints, and there are scenes that used to be blue, they're now like brown and warm and like natural colors and everything. And it's like, did they not know? Like, are these just technicians who just doing another film, doing it? They're just going through the line. They've got a whole row of films they have to do, and they're just applying the same everything to them, and not sort of taking into account the original, what the film is, and the original direction, or what the timers and that used, or whatever. It's a little bit of a problem with even with Buffy. They did the same thing when they put her onto HD. They just went back to the original films and just scanned it, and they didn't put any of the filters in. And there's daytime scenes where you can see it's daylight, and Buffy and Angel are like lying. It's supposed to be moonlight, and it's clearly daylight, and stuff like that. I don't know how that happens. Like, I don't understand how that happens. Like, how do these people not realize, oh, this is a horror movie, it's supposed to be cold and blue, so we need to make it cold and blue instead of making it all nice. And so, yeah. Now, the version that I saw at Cinemaniacs. Now, Cinemaniacs is a club in Melbourne, and they do annual themed marathons where they usually split it up for the first part and second part of the year. This year was alcoholism in film. They had The Rose, Boys in the Band, Days of Wine and Roses, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, which I saw because I love. Rio Bravo was the last one, and then the second part was hiking, camping, and the great outdoors. So they had Sleepaway Camp, which I nearly saw. Like, I nearly saw The Rose, but I didn't buy a ticket, and they'd sold out, and they said I could still get in, but I didn't want to go all the way there and then not get in, so I didn't go. Sleepaway Camp, I remember it not being really great, and I sort of watched a little bit of it on video before, and I didn't really feel like I wanted to sit and give it the cinema treatment, because I don't think it's very well made. It's really just the end that gets that whole movie through, and some of the characters, it's kind of fun to have kids in the camp. Like Friday the 13th, except for part 6, they never had any kids in the camp. It was always just counselors training or something. So it was nice to have kids in the camp, and that sort of atmosphere. So some of it was okay, but a lot of it was just kind of bad. And it's just the shocking ending and all the implications from that make it sort of stand out and have the sort of cult status that it does. They also, second film was Madman, so of course I saw that. And they're doing Day of the Animals, which I've never seen, Deliverance, which I'm going to see, and Wolf Lake, which I have no idea what it is, I haven't googled it. So that's their 6 films. Now, I wasn't really planning to do a review of them, but basically they do these every year. They've been doing it for a few years, and basically they have someone come and do a talk and give the film some sort of cultural relevance, basically let you know what it's about and where it stands. And they do usually do a good job, and they like to drink a lot, so if you're in Melbourne, you should go along to one of their things. It's good. I've been to quite a lot because they've shown a lot of old horror movies that I've wanted to see, because they don't just do horror, they do other things. They did a Oscars themed thing once, and they showed Dick Tracy and some other films that I'd always wanted to see on the big screen but never had. So it's really great sometimes, because you can really, sometimes you can sit down for DVD or Blu-ray and give it the full treatment, like your full attention, and it's like being in the cinema. But there's nothing the same as being in the cinema and just having your whole undivided attention on the film, instead of, often I'm watching a movie in the background while I'm doing other things, and just watching the good bits, especially if it's a film I've already seen. And that keeps it fresh in a way, because then when you do sit down and watch it properly, you see all the stuff you've missed and forgotten, and it's almost like seeing the film again. So I try not to watch some of the films that I love too much and watch them too closely, so then I can occasionally sit down and give it like a quality viewing, like Friday the 13th. On Friday the 13th, it's the only time I watch them. Halloween, I only watch them on Halloween. And then other ones, just occasionally I actually sit down and give them my full attention. And if I haven't seen them for a few years, it kind of helps. Now, I don't think I mentioned, when they were doing the film, Um, they based it on Cropsey, who was a New York legend, who was a guy who was kicked out of a mental institution. I think when it closed down, and he was living out in the woods, and he killed some kids, and he became like the boogeyman. Behave or Cropsey will get you. And there were a few films made about him. One was The Burning, which was being made at the same time, so they had to stop production, and because The Burning was already in production, so it was first, and they rewrote Cropsey to be Madman Mars, and the story is, I guess I should go into the story. The story is crazy farmer, brawler, had his nose bitten off in a fight, nasty, nasty guy, just goes and chops up his family with an axe one night, goes to the bar like nothing happened. The townsmen string him up and put an axe in his face and leave him hanging, and they come back the next day and he's not there. And he disappears, so does the bodies of his family, and he's never seen again. Now, and then, of course, he becomes a legend, behave kids, or Cropsey will get you. Cropsey. Madman Mars will get you. And when we see the film, it's based in a camp, and they filmed in a real camp in Fish Cove, Southampton, Long Island. And they basically the crew just stayed in a camp, just like Friday the 13th did. It's quite a good thing. Basically, everyone can just stay in the cabins, and you can film there, live there. Worked pretty well. They didn't have any issues except I think December 8th John Lennon was shot, so I think they had a day where they just didn't work that day because they felt they should pay their respects. But the production seemed to not have any real issues. The film it works pretty well. It's kind of weird because it's a first time director. A lot of the dialogue isn't unrealistic, and the characterizations are really kind of strange, and it has its own odd sort of quality where these people just don't seem like real people, but they're so like hyper stylized, like unintentionally, that they're kind of fascinating to watch. And like a lot of people in the audience were doing the thing I hate, where people watch old movies and they laugh, like they think, oh, I'm so much better than the film. Oh, I can see what they were doing there because I'm so smarter, so much ahead of the film. Blah, blah, blah. And they just laugh at stuff that's not meant to be funny and not really funny, and it's really only funny if you're stupid and you think you're smart. So I have trouble when I go to see old films with stupid people who don't understand the context, the relevance of the film, and don't view it in its context. There's a bit of that with this screening, and there's often is with horror movies. But then some of it is genuinely funny. Some of the lines are just surreal, just the way it was delivered. And I'm like, is it really just a bad film, or were they actually trying to do something on some sort of aesthetic, artistic level or something? I don't know, but it kind of works as this weird, surreal little film where none of the characters quite seem really like cartoons. And it's just a good old story where basically starts off, sorry, I should have said at the camp. It's a camp for gifted children, and there's a guy sitting around the campfire telling a story about Madman Mars, who basically was a brawler and not a very nice guy. He used to beat his wife and his kids and everything, and then got killed, and then disappeared, and then he's like living in the woods as a boogeyman, and apparently if you mention his name a little loud or go into his woods, he'll get you. And these guys, of course, are camping next to the house. And they literally are next to the house. It's a real story in the film, of course. One of them is smart enough to throw a rock through the window and yell out for his attention. And they get it. And I don't know, I just really enjoy it. There's something, it's very simple. It's not trying to be anything other than just a good little slasher film about a crazy old man out in the woods with an axe killing kids. I mean, how can you go wrong with an 80s horror movie like that? It's the kind of movie I can watch at night, just put on when I just need that sort of atmosphere and something in the background, and often it's kind of what I end up going to sleep to. There's a lot of old horror movies that I like the atmosphere. There's something about them. They just, I don't know. I have trouble sleeping. I have to have like the TV on sometimes. So it's just some movies just end up being the ones I just go to for some reason. Partly because I've seen them and I don't have to worry about if it's a good film. it'll wake me up because I want to watch it because I've seen it before. I can just sort of fall asleep. I don't know. No one needs to know all this. But yeah, that's it. I don't have any more information about it. Just it is good. It is fun. It's got its own quality. There's a reason it's got that status. It has made some like top horror movie lists and stuff from the 80s and that, and it kind of deserves it. I can't explain any more about it really. You just need to see it to believe it. Now I think I mentioned, unfortunately, the version that they showed at Cinemaniacs was full frame and quite pixely, and certainly wasn't Blu-ray and didn't have a lot of picture quality. The version I've got that was from YouTube is much nicer, and I'm guessing is the second DVD one, but I'm going to have to, it could be the Blu-ray that someone copied or something. So I'm going to have a closer look at that and work that out, and just give it a chance. If you haven't seen it, watch it, and if you have seen it, then you already know it's good, and you probably just wanted to see what someone else thought. But I'm going to leave it there because I'm well past 15 minutes. This was supposed to be a 10-minute quick little review, but I like talking about films, and I like talking about this one, and a lot of the old horror movies. I just love talking about them. So thanks for listening. Bye.